All right, well, game 4 tonight. Win or go home for the Kansas City Royals. That one was tough last night, a 3-2 loss to the New York Yankees, but man, the K was rocking. It was awesome to see playoff baseball back in Kansas City. It was the first time, in my 7 years that I've seen playoff baseball, obviously, being played in Kansas City. Town was lit, atmosphere was fantastic, and just a reminder, you do not need all the bells and whistles to get people out to a ballpark. Isn't it amazing how when there is a winning product on the field, people show up to watch baseball games? Whoa!
Talk about a bombshell.
I know. Trust me, I understand the K's not going to stay. It's not. It will be gone. John Sherman, the owner, has made that very clear. They will be moving on from this stadium by the end of this decade. But when you see the scene you saw last night, when the standing room only tickets are $200, when there are people that I know who paid $5,000 for Diamond Club tickets last night, Mark's eyes are popping out of his head. Can you believe that?
That's incredible.
I know. I was like, okay, well, you love baseball. You got the cash. Good for you. I love it. That's America, baby. But you can't tell me you can't make money out there with a winning product. You absolutely can. This town will support a winner. This town will support a team anyway, but it will definitely support a winner. And that's what you saw last night. As for the game itself, Giancarlo Stanton found his swing. What more can you say, right? The guy has been hot or cold. He either hits a home run or he strikes out. And unfortunately, last night, he had a big double off the wall that drove in the first run of the game, and he had the go-ahead home run in the 8th inning. Would you like to see more offense out of this Royals team? Yeah, you would, I would. But, Mark, how are you feeling going into Game 4 tonight with Garrett Cole on the mound for the Yankees against Michael Wacha?
The name Garrett Cole makes me a little bit nervous, but the way that the Royals hit him in Game 1, I think that they can get to him again.
That's exactly how I feel. You have to be able to realize that, Garrett Cole is not who he was 7-8 years ago, right? You're not going up against that Garrett Cole. You're going up against a guy whose best days are behind him and who, as you noted there, Mark, looked pretty damn good in Game 1. The Royals looked good against him in Game 1. So the Royals can absolutely win this game. They've already won in the Bronx, and they can win 2 straight here. They can. There's no doubt in my mind they can win 2 straight games in this series. I'm going to sit here and predict it? No. But I do believe that with the way each of these games have gone, the Royals have all the confidence and should have all the confidence they need to get a win tonight in what should be another outstanding scene out at Kauffman Stadium. I can't wait. Now, I will bring you some good news here because I know some of you sitting here on a Thursday morning are kind of like, oh, man, Royals lost. I'm licking my wounds, getting ready for Game 4. Maybe you were at the game. We had a lot of listeners who were at the game last night. Hope you guys and gals had a blast. Here's some good news. Well, I guess this depends on who you're going to vote for in November. But Kamala Harris's week continues to get worse. So now you've got this hurricane that is blasting right across the middle of Florida, Hurricane Milton. And right now it looks like it's on the East Coast, going towards Cocoa Beach, Daytona Beach, blew through Orlando, and parts of that West Coast did get hit pretty hard. You also had tornadoes all over southern Florida. I have a guy I went to college with. He now lives east of or west of Palm Beach, maybe 5 miles, and he had a tornado that blew right through his neighborhood. He had never seen anything like it in his life. He had downed trees. Luckily, his home was okay, but his neighborhood's a mess. If you haven't seen some of the tornado videos from down in South Florida, it looks like it's right here in Kansas or Missouri in terms of how big those suckers were. These were not little spin-ups EF1s. These were wedge tornadoes coming through southern Florida. So you've got Florida getting hit with this tornado, this hurricane. You have the roof of, speaking of baseball stadiums, the roof of the stadium that the Tampa Bay Rays play at that's been completely ripped off. The roof is gone. at the Tampa Bay Rays baseball stadium. So this thing did some serious damage. And, of course, as the sun starts to come up, we'll get a feel for just how bad the damage is on the west side of the state. But Governor Ron DeSantis is obviously the best governor, the most equipped governor to handle stuff like this. The governor of Florida has to be the most equipped and best governor to handle stuff like this. And he continues to have a fairly decent relationship with President Joe Biden right now. They're leaving the politics out of it, right? They're just doing what needs to be done. Joe Biden's giving Ron DeSantis the federal assistance that he's asked for and that he needs, and that's it. And then there's Kamala Harris, the vice president, who is so desperately trying to make herself relevant and look like some leader during this entire thing, right? She got upset with Ron DeSantis earlier in the week because he apparently didn't answer her call when it turned out that her staffers called his staffers, and the whole thing was way overblown. And Ron DeSantis is kind of sitting there like, hey, I've got a hurricane barreling down on my state. I don't have time for your vanity phone calls. I don't have time, John, for you to look like you're important when you actually have no sway in anything I'm trying to do here.
Hey, Ron, not the president's on the line.
Oh, that's outstanding and so true. It's all for show. DeSantis had no time for it this week. And then yesterday, Joe Biden gets asked about Kamala Harris calling, and I use my air quotes because it wasn't really Kamala Harris calling. It was Kamala Harris's staffers trying to set up a call with DeSantis staffers. And even Joe Biden is not sitting there and defending his vice president in this clip.
Mr. President, does Governor DeSantis need to take Vice President Harris's calls?
All I can tell you is I'm talking to Governor DeSantis. He's been very gracious. He's thanked me for all we've done. He knows what we're doing, and I think that's important.
The fact that Joe Biden did not defend his own VP, who is running for president, against a deep red Republican governor, should not be understated. That is enormous. Joe Biden had every chance. And listen, Joe Biden has not been afraid during his 40 years in office to make things highly political. The Joe Biden in office today is not old slap you on the back moderate Joe from 25 years ago. That guy left a long time ago. This Joe Biden has been hyper-partisan, highly divisive, and here he is with a chance to dump on a red state governor to help his VP, to try to make his VP who's running to replace him look good. And he doesn't take the opportunity. To use the baseball analogy, since that's where this town is right now, that ball was sitting on a tee for Pops. And he didn't blast it out of the park. Not because he couldn't, although maybe he couldn't. He chose not to. That says a lot. And there are a lot of rumblings right now about where exactly the relationship is between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. There are rumblings that Joe Biden is secretly, his staff secretly not happy with Kamala Harris. Some may say undermining Kamala Harris. I can't speak to that. All I can tell you is that when Joe Biden had that opportunity to help his VP, to say, you know what, even he could have said this, I know Ron's busy, but he should have taken the call. That's how he could have walked the fine line. He didn't even do that. In the meantime, as the hurricane is blowing across the state of Florida, where is the vice president? What is she doing? Well, she is out there teaching you about hurricanes. I kid you not. We have the audio, and then we'll get to the latest from the KU professor who went viral on the internet for all the wrong reasons here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Looking at Orlando, Florida here, where the water is clearly, 5 feet probably. Storm surge in Orlando. You've got cars underwater as I look at it here in Orlando, Florida. So obviously that's middle of the state, well inland. as Hurricane Milton blasts across that state. It is down to a Category 1 hurricane right now, but it has done a tremendous amount of damage. You'll see the roof of the Tampa Bay Rays baseball stadium has completely blown off. You will see footage as the sun starts to come up today. 3+ million people are without power, are the reports right now down in that state. So last night, as this hurricane is blasting across the Sunshine State, what do you have the vice president doing? You have Kamala Harris calling into the Weather Channel. Yeah, because if you're watching the Weather Channel and you're like sitting there, life or death situation, trying to figure out what the heck's going on, right? If you still have power. Or maybe you've got friends and family down in Florida. You're monitoring from here in Kansas City or somewhere else in the country. And you're like, okay, what's going on? Give me some photos. Give me some updates. Give me some live shots. Let's figure out what this sucker's doing here as it approaches landfall. We get Kamala Harris sharing what she knows about hurricanes that she probably learned 30 seconds prior to going on the air.
The other point, Mike, that I would make, especially it came through on the briefing from the federal experts, it's really important that we think about the language that we're using to talk about what we are predicting. Because, for example, it has moved from time to time from a Category 5 to a Category 4. It's important that we not emphasize that downgrading has happened because, in fact, the difference between Category 5 and Category 4 in terms of the danger and the damage is pretty much the same.
Are you a meteorologist, ma'am? No, but I did say at a Holiday Inn Express last night. I mean, what? What are we doing here? Kamala Harris talking about wind in hurricanes on the Weather Channel is just something that reeks of desperation. It's like, remember the kid, either guy or gal, going back to high school, who was just the ultimate suck-up and you knew was a total dunce? That's where we are now in this Kamala Harris campaign. Kamala Harris would not do any media for 2.5 months. Now she's calling into the freaking Weather Channel.
You know, I'd like to apply her theory to the inflation.
Yeah.
You know, so if it comes down a little, it's really not much different, right?
So, yeah, that works pretty well, too. Oh, my goodness. I saw this last night circulating on social media, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You couldn't get this person to take questions on a tarmac in early August. Now it's like, hey, Bob, dial up the Weather Channel. We're going on, baby. Yeah, these hurricanes are serious. You got to understand when it goes from a 5 to a 4, the numbers are coming down, but trust me, the wind is still serious.
Can you imagine the producers like, hey, I've got the vice president on the phone. Who? Vice president? No. It's not that impersonator, is it?
Yeah, exactly. It's not that woman from TikTok now, right? Who's doing the Kamala impressions? I mean, this was so unserious. And it just reeks of desperation is what it does. Now, that being said, this came on CNN last night, and the headline read as follows. The undeniable crisis that's not driving American voters. You know where this is going, right? Warm water in the Gulf of Mexico, writes CNN, that was predicted by climate scientists to feed harsher hurricanes helped supercharge September's Hurricane Helene. That was before October's monster storm Milton struck, the destruction of which will become clearer in the days to come. The science suggests Americans need to get used to more harsh weather events. Extreme storms, warmer waters, wildfires, and hotter weather. Evacuations and destruction will become more normal. However, writes CNN, in Gallup polling from late September, most of which was conducted just before Helene made landfall, registered voters were asked to rate the importance of 22 issues in this year's elections. Just 5% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents, along with slightly more than a third of Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters, said climate change was extremely important to their vote. In fact, writes CNN, climate change and transgender rights were the only two of the 22 issues listed by Gallup that half or fewer respondents said were either extremely or very important to their presidential vote. You know, when you wonder how you're going to afford your groceries, suddenly the weather isn't really as big of an issue. Climate change has always been one of those vanity issues that works for the OWW crowd, the overeducated, woke, white crowd. But the working class, multiracial American crowd does not care. Not that they don't want clean air, not that they want the climate to warm, but they sit there and they say, what exactly am I going to do about it right now? And more importantly, what is my government going to force me to do to try to improve the climate? And I also think the hypocrisy of this issue has become front and center for so many Americans. The people who preach about climate change are the same ones who fly in private jets. Whether it's Al Gore, whether it's John Kerry, or whether it's Taylor Swift. Not that she is, always preachy about climate change, but I'm saying those are the kind of people that typically say climate change is very important to them. And their hypocrisy is on full display. They will burn more fossil fuels in a month than you will burn in a year, and it's not even close. As they sit in their mansions and you're told to go get a 1,000 square foot apartment.
Yeah, but that's the byproduct of their guilt for doing so.
Oh, well, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're right. You are so spot on. So it's not that all of us as Americans don't want clean air that we can breathe. We understand the earth is warming. The question is, how much of it is us? And oh, by the way, why are we being asked to carry the load? Just us regular folks in America. Hey, don't drive that gas-guzzling SUV. Okay, John Kerry, let me know how that private jet trip goes from Martha's Vineyard down to Palm Beach. And the biggest abusers when it comes to this issue, China and India. And are we going to allow China to continue to eat our lunch at the expense of maybe having a very minor impact on climate change in America today, in the world today, and for the decades to come? Is that a risk that is worth taking? And the overwhelming answer today is no, it's not. 913-408-7957 as we look at some of the chaos happening right now in Florida. Daytona Beach is getting hit. The number of folks without power has risen to 3.3 million in Florida. So we'll keep you updated on Hurricane Milton as it now is hitting the east side of the state of Florida here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. As always, we are streaming all morning long on your Alexa and your Google Home. Coming up, a KU professor has gone viral for talking about lining up and shooting a specific portion of Donald Trump voters. We'll tell you who and why next. Philip Lowcock, the jokes write themselves. That is the KU professor who has been put on administrative leave after comments he made about endorsing violence against men who would not consider voting for a woman to be president. This went viral late yesterday during our show. It came from Ned Ryan. Ned is the son of Jim Ryan, who, of course, is a Kansas legend, former congressman. We all know about his Olympian days as well. So Ned is now a conservative activist. He's been a guest on this show. We tried to get Ned on this morning, but he couldn't make it. But he's the one who broke this yesterday. And it's video from a classroom at KU where Professor Philip Lowcock rants to a class of students about men who will not vote for Kamala Harris.
Guys are smarter than girls. You got some serious problems. That's what frustrates me. There are going to be some males in our society that will refuse to vote for a potential female president because they don't think females are smart enough to be president. We could line all those guys up and shoot them. They clearly don't understand the way the world works. Did I say that? Scratch that from the recording. I don't want the deans hearing that I said that.
Heavy breathing there from Phil, by the way. Jeez.
Amyl nitrate poppers or something, I guess.
Black people, the insurrection,
Yeah.
racism.
He's doing his best white guy impersonation of Corey Bush over there in St. Louis. Nice job. And now he can maybe go see a doctor since he's on administrative leave. My goodness. So, yeah.
What is with like making up something and then getting all pissed off about it?
Yeah.
You create some illusion in your head and then just start railing away.
Well, I think what's happening here, you're right. There's no evidence that if Donald Trump beats Kamala Harris, it's going to be because men felt like Kamala Harris was dumb because she's a woman. Like, I don't think Kamala Harris is bright because I hear her speak, but it's just because I don't think Kamala Harris is smart. It's not because she's a woman that I don't think she's smart. It's just that I don't think she's bright. But I don't think she's not bright because of her gender. I just don't find her to be a very smart individual. And I think if you listen to her talk for like more than 12 seconds, you'd probably come to a pretty similar conclusion. Why do you think her staff has not wanted her speaking for 2.5 months? Now they find themselves down in the polls, and it's like, oh, we better get Kamala talking again. We have to. We have no choice. Her own staff didn't want her speaking publicly. But they're laying the foundation for this narrative of if Kamala Harris loses, it will be, those men. Those men, you men, us men, we men. We're just not ready for a female president. There's going to be a massive gender gap in this election, and they will look at those numbers and they will say, the guys just, they're not ready for a female president, John. That's what it is.
Well, it's a good game plan. You see, you look at pre-existing conditions, like it's going to rain, we're going to run the ball. Nice day, no wind, we're going to throw the football.
Yes.
We already have seen the gender disparity.
Yes,
right?
we have.
So now we're going to use that.
Mm-hmm.
No, regardless.
Yeah. We'll use this to further our narrative on why our candidate lost. Our candidate didn't lose because, the economy is not exactly on fire and she's been the vice president, has been deciding votes on bills that help skyrocket inflation. People aren't going to vote for her because, the world's on fire and she's been Joe Biden's number 2 the entire 4-year run. No, it's going to be because men aren't ready for a woman president. Really? Let's put Condoleezza Rice at the top of the ticket and see how that goes. Let's put Winsome Sears, the Virginia lieutenant governor, who we had on the show yesterday. She's going to be in Kansas on Monday for an event that I'll be emceeing with the Kansas Black Republicans. And you can go if you're not black. Clearly, I'm the MC. And I'm not identifying as black right now. Let's put them up against Kamala Harris and see how that goes. It would probably go the same for the vast majority of men because it's not actually about gender. It will just be some lame excuse that gets pushed by people as to why Kamala Harris lost, and it will actually have nothing to do with why Kamala Harris lost. So this is a fake narrative. We've taken hundreds of calls on this radio show since Kamala Harris became the nominee, and I can't think of one where somebody said, I'm not voting for Kamala Harris specifically, explicitly, because I think women are dumb or something like that. Never heard it. But this is the narrative that some are making up, just like this KU professor, Philip Lowcock, who went viral yesterday and now is on administrative leave. And the response from KU is just absolutely horrific. We'll get to that coming up here on KCMO. 913-408-7957. Will is in the Northland on KCMO. Will, good morning. What's happening?
Hey, good morning, Pete. Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to comment on the comments that professor at Kansas made. Sadly, I graduated from university back in 2015. That kind of careless rhetoric from a lot of professors, sadly, is more common than people think. When I heard that, I really wasn't taken aback too much because I have vivid memories of my recent time at university and hearing professors just bring their politics in the classroom. And I want to take a moment to let anybody know who's thinking about going to college, be very careful about what you study. I highly recommend either nursing, medicine, law, or engineering, because I hate to say most of the other majors out there that they offer, sadly, you're going to get a lot of this politics in the classroom and wind up throwing tens of thousands of dollars away. I hate to say, but that's just how I see it.
So, Will, you graduated in 2015?
Sorry, I actually started in 2015, graduated 2019.
Oh, okay. So you were in college during Donald Trump's time in office.
I was, yes.
And do you mind sharing where and what stuff you heard?
Well, I don't want to. So I do love my alma mater. I don't want to. I don't want to say their name specifically on the show, but I will say it was out on the West Coast, and yeah, the reaction to it was a lot of surprise. They thought that Hillary Clinton had it in the bag, but yeah, there was a lot of campus protesting going on, and professors sending emails saying, "Hey, we're really sorry for those of you who are disappointed by the results. Take a few days if you need to cope with it or whatever." So, and I'm being dead serious. I'm being dead serious.
Take a few days to cope over it. Oh my goodness. Let me just ask you this then, Will. What would you say to young people or their parents who are getting set for college right now? Maybe it's KU, maybe it's somewhere else, and they have these concerns. What should they do? How should they combat it? How should they go into it with a level mind and a level head?
Well, I think, like I said, there's certain majors that I think are going to be more valuable, particularly if anybody's looking at going into business. I say engineering because just being kind of fresh into the job market myself, I was in the military for a little bit, but now seeing the job market as it is, engineering is going to be something that's really going to separate you and set you apart. Now, some organizations are just going to look at a college degree as a check the box kind of thing, and you might be set up in that way, but I think particularly in the business realm, engineering is going to be useful. And then, like I said, if being a lawyer or a doctor or a nurse, that's obviously something you have to have a college degree for. But a lot of the other sociology-related majors, just my personal advice would be steer clear of that. I just don't think that's going to add a whole lot of value to your resume.
Well, good stuff, man. I'm glad you made it out of there in one piece, and you still got your head on straight. Thanks for the call.
Of course.
All right, there you go. Will, a fairly recent college graduate out of the Northland on KCMO. So Philip Lowcock, this KU professor who went viral yesterday, racked up millions of views for what he said on X, or what he said in a classroom that got posted and leaked to X and on X. It's been viewed millions of times. And he said that men who refuse to vote for a potential female president because they don't think females are smart enough should be lined up and shot. He has been put on administrative leave, but the response from KU, the statement from KU, is a total embarrassment. I will share that statement with you next, and we'll get to your calls at 913-408-7957. Pete Mundo on a Thursday morning on KCMO. Here he is, the cock man, Philip Lowcock, professor on administrative leave from KU, after he said this.
Guys are smarter than girls. You got some serious problems. That's what frustrates me. There are going to be some males in our society that will refuse to vote for a potential female president because they don't think females are smart enough to be president. We could line all those guys up and shoot them. They clearly don't understand the way the world works. Did I say that? Scratch that from the recording. I don't want the deans hearing that I said that.
Man, what a clown and a half that guy is. But just as clownish as KU's response. So here's the statement from the University of Kansas regarding this video. The university is aware of a classroom video in which an instructor made an inappropriate reference to violence. That's what we call this, an inappropriate reference to violence? No, it's not a reference to violence. It is a call for violence. Who wants to tell KU what the definition of a reference is? He wasn't alluding to violence. He was calling for violence. The definition of a reference is the action of mentioning or alluding to something. He called for violence. He didn't refer to it. That's only sentence one from this embarrassing statement from KU. The instructor is being placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. Okay, fine. You got to put that there legally, but what further investigation is there? The instructor offers his sincerest apologies and deeply regrets the situation. His intent was to emphasize his advocacy for women's rights and equality, and he recognizes he did a very poor job of doing so. The university has established process for situations like this and will follow that process. Oh, that's what we call. So they made excuses for this guy who talked about lining people up and shooting them. KU gave this guy an out on the back end. Let me ask you this. Not that I want to do the whataboutism, but in this case, I do think it's important. Let's say a professor got up there and said, you know what? If you're a female and you're not voting for Donald Trump, well, it's probably because you think men are too stupid to do the job, and therefore we're going to line you up and shoot you. Do you think KU or anybody would put out a statement and be like, well, you know, he was just emphasizing his advocacy for men's rights and recognizes he did a very poor job of doing so? Are you kidding me? KU made an excuse for this professor. That's what they did in that embarrassment of a statement and calling it an inappropriate reference to violence. My goodness. Like, I know a lot of people who send their kids to KU and they're traditional and they have more traditional conservative values and their kids come out great. I know plenty of conservatives who have gone to KU who are older, who are recent graduates. But man, your university should be ashamed this morning with how they are handling this situation. Sherry's in Overland Park on KCMO. Go ahead, Sherry. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. The irony of this professor's comments is he actually supported it by saying women are smarter than men, and the fact that he did that and that when men don't understand the consequences, well, obviously he didn't understand the consequences either. So it's funny, he was being a perfect example of what he was talking about.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely, Sherry. Thank you very much. Well said. John is in Topeka. What's up, John?
Hey, good morning. In that Board of Regents boardroom there, as they were speaking, they were saying, comrade, that is an inappropriate reference to how we deal with those who differ from us ideologically. Because properly, we don't waste bullets. We round them up and put them into work camps called gulags and slowly starve them to death as we work them to death.
What are you talking about, John? I'm genuinely curious. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Stalin rounded up people.
No, I know, but I don't get the reference to the professor.
Oh, this professor? Oh, because he's wasting bullets. He wants to round people up and shoot them, when the proper way to deal with the adversary is to starve them to death slowly while working to death.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, John.
Yep. Historically, that's accurate.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
anyhow.
Thank you, John. Very good point. Okay. Jim's out east. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, Pete, I don't think that women are smarter than men or men are smarter than women. It's just, I figured out the other day, Kamala Harris in her meetings that she said she was the last person in. She quite literally walked into the meeting after it was all done. She was the last one in the room.
The last one to literally walk into the room. Thank you, Jim. Paul's in Kansas City, 913-408-7957. Paul, go ahead. You're on KCMO.
Yeah, Pete, I kind of took that reference as the same as the SS death units that followed the German army, the Jewish occupied territories. They lined up Jews and shot at men, women, and children. So I don't know if KU needs to take this a little more serious, but a lot of people out here took that reference. Maybe he's an anti-Semite, and that's where his thought line was that, hey, line him up and shoot him, references to that. So, yeah, I just took offense to that. They ought to take it more serious.
Well, they're not, and that's what I can't figure out, Paul. It's like they're already downplaying it with their statement putting him on leave. It's like they know they had to because he got caught, but the way they made excuses for this guy in the official statement from KU tells me they're not taking it all that serious, man.
Yeah, it's a bad look on them, and that guy needs to. Anytime you reference violence like that, people out here that have ancestors that were lined up and shot, we take offense to that. So yeah, I agree with you.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it, man. I do. This is not a story that should go away or is going to go away, and we're going to make sure that we follow up on it when it comes to Phil Lowcock, who has no business being around impressionable young people with commentary like that. By the way, you think that's the first time he's just let it slip about shooting people who don't vote, in his opinion, the air quotes right way? Come on now. Yeah, it just so happened into a long tenure there at KU. Just whoops, that one slipped out of the side door. Eesh.
Yeah, I just thought of it.
Yeah. Something tells me that's not his first time.
Probably not there. Kind of
No
getting
way.
excited as he was going along.
He was. Looking forward tonight to being out in Lynn County, Kansas, down in Mound City. I'll be out there for the annual Sunflower Dinner. So if you're going to be out there in Lynn County, Kansas tonight, we'll look forward to seeing you out later this evening. Looking forward to seeing a great crowd out there. Donald Trump last night at a rally.
We just rented Madison Square Garden. We're going to make a play. We're going to make a play for New York. Hasn't been done in a long time.
Yeah, and it's not going to happen this year. I know we just had a good laugh about it with our last guest, John Jastrzemski, here on KCMO, who is based there in New York and covers the Yankees, about, is New York a swing state? And the answer is no. It's not. Now, there are parts of New York that are deep red. Unfortunately, you have a city with 8 million people in it, and 5 million of them have broken brains, so New York is not in play. And I heard Trump say this last night, and I thought to myself, what is he doing? This is so dumb. What a waste of time. What a waste of resources. And I saw a lot of people commenting on that even in the posts on X where they shared that video. And I was like, yeah, that's really stupid. And then I said, well, hold on, wait a second. Maybe this makes a tremendous amount of sense. Mostly as a media play. Not because he's going to win New York. He's not. Now, Trump has to say that we think New York is in play to justify doing the rally. He can't say why he's really doing the rally. But I believe the reason he's really doing the rally is for the optics of it. Is to stand there in New York City and Manhattan in Madison Square Garden and have 20,000 people going nuts for him as more of a display tool and tactic, and it will force the media to cover a massive rally in one of the most blue parts of the entire nation, arguably the bluest part of the entire nation, at least this side of San Francisco. And from that standpoint, seeing a packed Madison Square Garden for Donald Trump, of all people, would be quite a message in the days leading up to the election. There's a lot of work happening in the swing states of Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Nevada and Arizona and North Carolina. And, Trump's doing all his rallies there in large part because you've got registrations to vote ending soon. You've got early voting underway. Going to do one rally in New York at a place like Madison Square Garden is not about New York, even though he says it is. It's really not about that. What it's about is about getting the media coverage, the media attention, just like he did pretty effectively when he did that other rally on Long Island a few weeks ago. Same thing. He forces the media market to cover him when he's in these places. Now, I wish he'd come here and do one outside of Arrowhead Stadium one day. That would be quite a scene. Maybe, you could have Harrison Butker hanging out. Dare I say Brittany Mahomes hanging out. You could have a whole slew of people. Not Taylor Swift, but you could have a whole slew of folks hanging out. It'd be a great time. I'll show up. You'll show up. Man, we'll have that place popping. But I get it. He wants to be in Madison Square Garden, so that's what he's going to do. But it actually is not a bad idea at all. Now, speaking of rallies and events happening, Harrison Butker is going to be with Josh Hawley today up in Parkville for a rally. So I'm going to be up there. I've got an exclusive interview with those two guys that I will share with you tomorrow morning on the show. We have some one-on-one time, talk to both guys, get an interview. You are only going to hear it right here on KCMO Talk Radio tomorrow morning. So we're looking forward to that, and that's going to be up in Parkville. I think it's a 12:30 deal. in Parkville today. So for some of you saying, well, I thought you guys don't like it when athletes get involved in politics. Well, I'm not expecting to see Harrison Butker with his Josh Hawley pin when he gets on the field next week to take on the 49ers after the bye week this week. No. What Harrison Butker does in his spare time, what he chooses to do with his free time as an American citizen and a Missouri resident, is not really my business. That's how I always felt. That's why, like the Taylor Swift thing, I think she's wrong, but I'm not bothered by it. I think it hurts her business in part because she's really an entrepreneur that wants to appeal to as many people as possible. Harrison Butker, in many senses, athletes don't need to do that, right? They're making their money based on how good they are at their sport. Doesn't, for the most part, it could impact their endorsements, but let's be honest, kickers aren't exactly endorsement vehicles anyway. So if you're Harrison Butker, and I believe he's the highest paid kicker in the game as is, you feel like you're in a good spot anyway. And if you're very passionate about politics, well, he's got every right in his own time on a Thursday afternoon to go endorse and do an event with Josh Hawley. I would have no issue if somebody else on the other side of the aisle chose to do that with the Chiefs or the Royals. But when it comes to what's going on the field, just leave it off the field. That's what we have been asking for since all the Kaepernick stuff broke. Just don't bring it on the field. And as long as Butker's not doing that, and there's nothing to suggest he's going to do that, then you know what? Leave him alone. That's it. But the Kansas City Star had about a 800 to 1,000 word piece on this yesterday. Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker throws his weight behind Missouri Senator Josh Hawley. I'm surprised they didn't throw the word insurrectionist into the headline of the article because they just can't help themselves. 913-408-7957 as we roll through the 8 o'clock hour on KCMO Talk Radio.
Guys are smarter than girls. You got some serious problems. That's what frustrates me. There are going to be some males in our society that will refuse to vote for a potential female president because they don't think females are smart enough to be president. We could line all those guys up and shoot them. They clearly don't understand the way the world works. Did I say that? Scratch that from the recording. I don't want the deans hearing that I said that.
Did I say that?
It's open mic down here. Tip the waitresses. Drive carefully, kids.
Philip Locock, KU professor who's been put on administrative leave. Mark can't get enough of the name for some reason. I don't know. His sophomoric humor just breaks out.
I don't know. It just happens.
All right. Just happens. Let's go to Brett. He's on KCMO. What's up, Brett?
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, buddy.
Hey, so my point of this is you're going to hear the media say he inadvertently said that. You're going to hear he'll come out with an apology eventually and say it was a misjudgment of his and all this stuff. The way that you know none of that's true is, one, you hear his breathing get heavier and heavier as he's getting ready to say it, so he knows he's about to say something he shouldn't. And two, he says, let's cut that from the recording. I don't need the deans hearing that. He 100% knew what he was doing. He's not going to be sorry for it. He did it on purpose, and the media's going to twist it like, oh, it was just.
Well, Brett, here's what I will say. The media's not going to twist it. You know what they're going to do? The story's dead today. No pun intended with this guy talking about lining people up and shooting them. The story is dead today. They've got the Royals to cover. They've got all hands on deck out at Kauffman Stadium, and that's fine. I mean, listen, trust me, I'm pulling for the Royals tonight. My Mets are going to the NLCS. I'm all about it. I mean, we've talked plenty of baseball on this show this morning, over the last couple of weeks. Like, I get it. The Royals are the biggest story in town. No questions. Talked to Quentin Lucas about him this morning. We're going to get Stegall's opinion coming up here on the Royals and trying to win tonight in Game 4. So I don't deny that, but it is great cover for them to not pursue this story any further and not stay on it. And this is where the bias in journalism can come in. I've always said it's not just how you cover a story, it's what stories you cover and how much oxygen you give to a story that also shows bias in journalism. And this right now, we're living through it, is a prime example of exactly what I'm talking about. What if you had some professor at some podunk college, I don't want to name one, but, pick a podunk college in Missouri, who came out and said some incredibly awful things about people who vote for Kamala Harris, or insinuated why people might vote for Kamala Harris. You know as well as I do, Kansas City Star, front page. Local TV, bing, bang, boom. They'd all be on it. And I'm not saying a story like that should not be covered. I'm just saying when you've got this happening at your flagship university in the region, well, guess what? That is a story, especially given the political violence that we've lived through in this country over the last 3 months. 913-408-7957. Leavenworth is where Rick is. Rick, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, so obviously the guy's a moron. And, did I say that? Strike that. Please, strike that from the recording.
Too late. We didn't dump you. You're on the air.
Yeah. Hey, I would not vote for Harris because she's incompetent and she's proven so. But I would definitely vote for Condoleezza Rice. Obviously, she's not going to run because she's smarter than that and put herself through all the political hoo-ha. But, it's not about a female. It's not about a male. It's about who's competent, who's capable, who believes in our country and is going to do right by the people who elect them. That is key. And it has nothing to do with gender, as far as I'm concerned.
It has nothing to do with
and
gender.
I'm a male.
Well, thank you for clarifying, Rick. I appreciate that. I was unsure. That's all I need to know about your manhood is that you are one. So thank you for that. I appreciate it, Rick. Listen, you're right. And that's the case for tens of millions of Americans. And anecdotally, the hundreds who have called this show in the last couple of months and out of both sides of the aisle, but I'm talking about those who are not going to vote for Kamala Harris, explaining why they're not going to vote for Kamala Harris. And at no point has anyone been like, because she's a woman. Now, you might not think Kamala Harris is all that bright. I don't. But it's not because of her gender. It's just because she happens to be a human being who doesn't have very good, interesting, or smart thoughts. And I'll add this as well. Like, Trump has great political instincts, but Trump's not a genius either. All right? Like, I don't think if I needed somebody to take a test for me, Trump would not be in my top 15, 20, 25. Like, when you hear Trump talk, it's kind of the same thing over and over again. But I don't really care. I'm not voting for the smartest person. Now, I think he's smarter than her when you put them side by side, but I don't think Trump's a Mensa member. I don't. But he's got a track record that I really like on the policy side. And when I compare it side by side with her policy record as VP, it's not even close. And that's what tens of millions of Americans are going to conclude here in the next few weeks. Nothing to do with gender of anybody at all. Heck, I heard Kamala Harris last night on the Weather Channel. Did you hear this? Yeah, I know. You're watching the Weather Channel. Maybe you got family down there in Florida. You're making sure they're okay. You're trying to figure out what's going on with Hurricane Milton. And here comes your esteemed VP who just learned about hurricanes in the last 30 seconds.
The other point, Mike, that I would make, especially it came through on the briefing from the federal experts, it's really important that we think about the language that we're using to talk about what we are predicting. Because, for example, it has moved from time to time from a Category 5 to a Category 4. It's important that we not emphasize that downgrading has happened because, in fact, the difference between Category 5 and Category 4 in terms of the danger and the damage is pretty much the same.
So are you a meteorologist, ma'am? No, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So it's like, what are we doing here? I'm watching the Weather Channel and I'm getting the Veep. It is an episode of Veep is what it's turning into. The Weather Channel. Here's what's happening, though. Kamala Harris is trying to use this hurricane to appear like she's somebody you can trust in a crisis. And I think it's backfiring in a tremendous way. Ron DeSantis told her to take a hike. You can do nothing when it comes to hurricane relief. Why are you calling me? You're calling me for political gain, or your staff is calling my staff for political gain and then bagging on me. But even Biden, he's not buying it.
Mr. President, does Governor DeSantis need to take Vice President Harris's calls?
All I can tell you is I'm talking to Governor DeSantis. He's been very gracious. He's thanked me for all we've done. He knows what we're doing, and I think that's important.
Even Biden isn't backing his own Veep in this one. So what does she do? Dial up the Weather Channel. I'll talk about Category 5 versus Category 4. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.